part 2, and we're gonna address the effort, like minimizing the effort. We're gonna shoot it down like a dead animal. So, effort regarding dry fasting. Okay. First of all, if you're addicted to coffee or to cigarettes or to any other substance, um, if you stop eating and drinking water, you do dry fasting, but you also have to stop coffee and cigarettes and any other substance, right? The pain, the biological pain that you feel when you also quit smoking and coffee is huge, right? Of course, there's a huge amount of effort. So if you don't have the additional pain of substances of of the relapse, then you can see how you reduce the effort, right? So first of all, we're gonna make what's called distinctions, right? Or opposites, right? Proper opposites, right? So you can see how if you're addicted, and then the proper opposite would be not addicted. Okay? So you can see how if you're not addicted, dry fasting is easier, right? So we prefer this one. Now, what do? Well, you don't do dry fasting until you get rid of the addiction. So in order to get rid of the addiction with nicotine, right? Because we are all addicted to nicotine because we're animals. We like nicotine. So we need to understand that the way to get rid of the addiction of nicotine is in 2 steps. So this can also be like a course of how to get rid of the addiction to nicotine. First of all, we switch the method of administering nicotine, right? So if we're smoking, then we're gonna change the delivery of the nicotine to another source so that we decouple from the mind the source from the substance. So for example, a very effective thing will be to chew gum with nicotine, right? You can chew a bunch of gum, just chew gum, right? Get your nicotine, but remove the method of administering nicotine from cigarettes, right? And that process will take you about 2 weeks for your psychology to stop correlate cigarettes with the administration of nicotine, and you will become addicted to gums, essentially. But in the process, you're gonna get rid of the MMOIs and all the antidepressants they put in cigarettes that you didn't even consider, and you will get rid of that addiction. And there's another component which I'm not sure how it works, but it's much easier to then quit the gum than to quit the cigarettes, right? So what you do is, if you're addicted to cigarettes, you chew gum for like 2 weeks, and then for another week or two, you stop chewing gum. You don't even have it in the house, and that's how you transition slowly to completely getting rid of the nicotine. So you smoke, you chew gum for 2 weeks without smoking, right? There's going to be the pain of transitioning from one state to the other, and then you again switch from chewing nicotine gum to not chewing nicotine gum, and that will take another 1 or 2 weeks, and then you are completely not addicted to nicotine anymore, right? That's how much time it takes. There's of course the psychological component of wanting to smoke, but what's interesting is that when it comes to dry fasting, you won't suffer because of that, right? The suffering because of the lack of food and water will be so saturating your mind that you won't even consider the psychological caprice of smoking, right? So we get rid of the biological addiction that way, and with coffee you pretty much have to do the same. Yeah, well, with coffee, just quit it and wait for like 1 and 2 weeks, right? It's going to be dreadful, but that's how you do it. And other substances kind of the same. So you get to a context, to a point in life where you're not addicted, right? And we're gonna do a bunch of things, right? But this is the proper way, right? If you're addicted, you won't stand a chance to do dry fasting properly. So we finished the dimension of addiction, okay? What's the next point? Well, you have to understand that if you enter dry fasting with sodium in your system, then the sodium from the salt will retain the water, right? So with sodium versus without sodium, if you don't have sodium in the system, your body is like 70% water, right? Your body will start giving you a bunch of water from itself. The only reason why it doesn't give you is because of the sodium. So don't eat salt for a week before the dry fast, so that you don't feel thirsty, right? Also take, not much, but take a little bit of magnesium and potassium, right? More than you would take normally. You're making a switch in electrons, and this is going to hydrate you very well without drinking water during the dry fast. Okay, so we've addressed this. Oh, by the way, those are like intersections of context, right? So it's not like there's a particular way, right? I'm just laying out the significant principles, right? It's not like there's a order. Okay, the next principle that comes to mind is let's see. Obviously, you wouldn't want to be annoyed, right? You wouldn't want to be annoyed by workmates or family or friends or anybody, right? So, we can say that those are psychological components, but as I was saying to you, there's no particular order of principles, right? So, we say no annoyances. And here we say annoyances. Where do you think you're gonna find it less effort, right? Then we also have, speaking about the psychological component, there's the, so there's annoyance, but then there's the component of stress, which is different from annoyance. It's more like fear-based, right? Now, speaking, and by the way, you can control those by setting your environment or your workspace such that you don't get bothered or whatever, right? And those psychological components are very, very important, right? So you don't feel annoyed, you don't feel stressed, then there's no temptations. Temptation is huge, right? What does it mean, temptation? It means to see water, to see a bottle of water in the house. You don't see it. You tell the people that live with you in the house to keep the water in the kitchen, and you don't enter the kitchen, close the door, right? When they want to drink water, they go to the kitchen. You don't want to be tempted, right? You don't want to look at pictures with food and water online, and you don't want to go to restaurants or pubs, right? So no temptation. Your body will react with a bunch of pain if it's tempted. So if we don't tempt it, then we don't get the pain, obviously, right? But it's important to lay out the principles, right? Okay, there's another psychological component which has to do with the fact that you might be lacking confidence, right? So we can say here 100%. There's a word, it's not really confidence, it's more like dedicated, yeah. Right? If you're, there's of course the physical appearance of you being dedicated, but I'm talking specifically about the psychological state of feeling that you're dedicated, right? Versus half dedicated. There's another word for that. It's called unserious, right? Okay. Now, of course, you can't force this, right? So let's investigate the components of dedication, right? So belief, right? You have the 100% belief that this works, right? So that's why I spent time talking in the previous recording about belief, such that you enter dry fasting with belief, right? So you have belief in the method, but you also don't 0% fear, right? Now, if you start fearing that you're gonna die, or that you're gonna damage your body, or that you're gonna, I don't know, suffer because of dehydration, then you're not gonna be 100% psychologically dedicated to this, you see. So we have to talk right now about the fact that everything is gonna be fine. Scientific papers with people spending 5 days dry fasting, absolutely no problem. They were from different walks of life, different ages, much older than us, perfectly fine with 5 days. Secondly, the body has 2 stages of releasing a bunch of water, right? It's called the acidosis crisis. It has acidosis crisis in day 6 and acidosis crisis in day 9. So you won't be in trouble. You can do 11 days just fine, because in day 9 you get more water release, right? So you won't need to do like 11 days. You won't even need to do 6 or 7 days. Just do 5, right? Everything is fine. Zero fear. Okay, so we have talked about belief and fear, right? Why would you not be dedicated? Well, there's obviously the thinking and feeling that there might be an easy way, like an easy way. There is no other way, right? This is called commitment. Commitment in the method. Okay, so if you have 100% commitment and you have no fear and you have 100% belief, you see how you will be 100% dedicated as opposed to not. Okay, so then like everything in life, like this is the proper method of how we can reveal what's missing. We take the opposite, which is we take the opposite of, those are called failure conditions, right? Failure conditions. So the opposite of the failure condition is the necessary principles, right, to get success. So we take the scenario where you're not addicted, you don't have sodium, and you're psychologically very well, and we ask ourselves, why would you feel like it's effortful, even though we've put yourself in this nice context, right? And now I'm pulling out from the mind, like as I'm in this context, I'm seeing in a way that I wouldn't have been able to see before, right? It's sort of like you look for the keys in the apartment, and then if you eliminate a bunch of stuff and you're in the correct room, you're able to see, you're more probable to see the keys than if you are not first of all eliminating all the other big rooms, right? So now that we've zoomed in the context of where our result, which is very less effort, lies, we will try to see better, right? I mean, we won't try, we're gonna see better, right? So let's see what we see. So what's the other failure condition, right, in this scenario in the right? Right, so psychologically great, no sodium, not addicted. Ah, okay, you see, I can see something. You're bored, time goes by very slow, like you're like impatient, right? So, you see, we have to add in a component of not bored. We can say stimulated, right? But let's just say not bored because of a certain ability of this proper opposite. Okay, so not bored. What does it mean to not be bored? Does it mean to be stimulated? That's one component. Can it mean something else, to not be bored? Well, you can sleep, that's not stimulated, so you can sleep a lot, but there's a particular amount of time that you can sleep. Oh, and by the way, when you enter the day 3 or day 4 of the dry fast, then you won't be able to sleep more than 5 hours a night. So, and the more you do it, the less you sleep. And that's great. That's great. It's good that you won't be able to sleep. That means your body is producing cortisol, which is fighting the disease, right? It's keeping the body in check. So what do you do? Well, you get nice activities, right? Nice things that you love. Nice things, right? It could be some nice movies, but it shouldn't contain food, right? Some nice series. And by the way, those shouldn't contain things that psychologically makes you stressed or tempted or less dedicated or annoyed, right? That's why I say nice. So we have movies, series, we have pets, like a cat, a dog, right? The more you're like a passive consumer, the better, right? Because if you're an active consumer, like, you know, if you're playing a game physically or on the computer, or if you're writing stuff down on a piece of paper, then you can see how at some points that may feel like not as nice as simply being a passive observer, right? So you want to prepare movie series of nice things digitally on the TV, books, right? You may want to read like a nice book. You may want to watch some mindless YouTube videos. This might be a great chance to finish your watch list, right, in YouTube. So now that we're in the context of not being bored, like you have nice things to do. Oh, and also it's not only nice, but it's also like you wanted to do them anyway, right? You wanted to do them, and now this is the perfect moment that you can do them, because the brain understands to some extent that if you're just doing them for the sake of time passing, then it becomes boring, right? So this is like an important component. So you're not bored, you're psychologically very well. There's also the distinction between perceiving or visualizing the result, which is the amazing emotional feeling when you're gonna get rid of the ringing, right? Versus not thinking about it, not thinking about the result, right? Okay, so hold on, let me just do this. And by the way, those are proper opposites, right? That's why it's like infallible. That's why it's not like random. It's not like I'm telling you to wear a bracelet or to do something. I'm making opposites, and you can see how the opposite is a failure condition. The opposite would imply failure, and it would imply effort. And then we go from that to the proper opposite, and that's how we reveal that the proper opposite has to be what's helpful, right? It's not like arbitrary. Okay, so we're perceiving the result. We're thinking that, oh my god, it's gonna be great. We're not bored. We're like perfectly fine psychologically. Water gets released and we're not addicted, right? So there's I can see another failure condition. For example, if you haven't mapped out properly the schedule, right? So you have like a clear schedule of when you enter the dry fast and when you exit. Because if you don't have a clean schedule, you have a messy notion in your head about when is the 3 or 5 days of dry fasting finishing. You don't want that. You want clarity. You want to know exactly when you entered, exactly when you exit. Okay, and probably the part 3 video will gonna talk about both the schedule and the proper preparation, and also the proper refeed after the dry fast, right, in order to make it effective. But now we're addressing the effort component, right? So now we imagine you have a clear schedule, you know your result, you're psychologically good, you're not bored, you're not addicted, you release water, you know, you're not stressed from work, everything's fine, right? You're just sitting in bed suffering. Oh, by the way, there's another component. So I used to think that if I go to the gym while dry fasting, or if I do some effort, it's going to boost autophagy, right? As Yannick explained, if you do dry fasting, you won't increase autophagy by anything else added, like not by rapamycin, not by sport, not by sauna. Instead, what's effort going to do is it's going to build lactic acid in your muscles, and you're going to be in physical pain, right? So no physical stress. Now you could walk, and walks are great, right? Because walks are nice, relaxing, and also because they give you oxygen in your body, right? Because you're breathing more when you're walking as opposed to when you're not walking. And when you get oxygen in your body, the mitochondria starts releasing more ATP because of the some Krebs cycle stuff. Walks are great to facilitate healing. So you don't want physical stress such as lifting weights or running, right? But you want walks. Right, so here we can say gym, running, lifting, and all of that stuff. Okay, so no pain. Okay, so you can see how being in this context with those principles reduced effort quite a lot, right? So I'm not God to tell you how to completely get rid of the effort. Probably you could, right? Because there are like wise people like Buddha that whatever didn't feel the effort. But I'm just reducing it, right, for those proper opposites. There's a yeah. Kind of reduced it quite significantly, and of course, like if you figure out other proper opposites, not random elements, right? I'm talking about proper opposites where being on one side as opposed to the other like clearly is an advantage, right? You can add them, right? Like those are just some distinctions that I came up with, but and how do you come with that? Well, you take this context that I've already laid out, which is the intersection of all the things in the right, and then you ask yourself, what's another distinction? And if you can figure out, then great, you know, you add it and you make it a principle. So yeah, that's how we kind of minimized effort a bunch. And yeah, the opposite is resulting in the obvious inability to find it easy, right?